The decade of the 1980s may have spawned some of the most outrageous, outlandish, most innovative horror movie franchises we have ever experienced in a lifetime. This decade did get its fair share of the good, the bad, and the pure and simple ugly variety of grindhouse-style horror film of magnitudes of quality. Not all these films were of equal passion and quality or could invoke terror lurking around corners like the golden age of cinema once could. It would take a certain kind of horror villain to wake the audience from its boredom. A film that covers one's eyes from the sight of horrific hysterics jumping off the screen. A villain who will make you think twice before closing your eyes at night. A villain who reminds us all that every town in America has an Elm Street. The brainchild of the late great Wes Craven, the humanoid entity of our nightmares. Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street. New Line Cinema and Smart Egg Pictures collectively discovered pretty much horror movie lightning in a bottle. The collective minds and fortitude from both studio houses gifted all of us horror fans this iconic villain. This film carried the historical winning hand bet from both houses, all on the potential strength and relevancy of their prize fighter villain. That most would argue that a villain like Freddy Krueger has never been conceived before until now. We, the audience, have experienced a lot of hits and misses, but Freddy Krueger's introduction to the silver screen was a first-time experience unlike any villain I have ever witnessed in the past. Freddy's on-screen presence of scaring his victims before landing the kill is what truly makes Freddy Krueger a force to be reckoned with beyond the real world. But this film of A Nightmare on Elm Street really doesn't bother to explain any in-depth backstory on Freddy's murderous past. At least not until maybe the third act of this film, with the audience witnessing a private conversation between mother and daughter with no visual flashbacks of past events. We, the audience, can only go by the testimonial story of a mother's past relationship with Freddy Krueger. She described in detail past events that would eventually lead up to Freddy Krueger's inevitable death by the hands of vengeful parents, by cornering him in a building and burning him alive. Having took the law within their own hands, this collective crew of avenging parents sought out private justice against a child murdering Freddy Krueger. It's the ending results of what they've collectively done that has caused their future kin to be caught in the crossfires of Freddy's razor-sharp glove. However, accountable blame must be pointed at someone or some bodies that led to this cause and effect. Today, let's dive a little deeper into the mythos of the origin town of Springwood, Ohio, the Elm Street parents, the Elm Street teens, along with Freddy himself. As mentioned earlier, there was a scene within the original A Nightmare on Elm Street film that verbally explained that Freddy Krueger was profiled by the Elm Street parents as being a filthy child murderer who killed about 20 kids in the neighborhood, kids they all knew. Now, if we, the audience, accepts what she testifies as truth, how many parents were originally involved, and where are these parents now during Freddy's return? This original film only focuses upon the lives of just 4 teenage students' direct encounters with Freddy Krueger. But before these events even happened, there's an unknown number of Elm Street parents originally involved in stopping Freddy's reign of terror, which I'm assuming had to be the early 1960s. Now, we, the audience, can only assume without actual confirmation that the parents of the new Elm Street kids were definitely involved in Freddy's death. That's Tina Gray, Rod Lane, Lynn Lands, and Nancy Thompson's parents. 4 teenage kids with no prior knowledge about Freddy Krueger's history involving this town. The remaining parents are either living scattered anywhere within Springwood, or they've already moved out from Ohio. But why wouldn't Freddy just target all the parents first before honing in on their teenage kids? Now granted, Freddy Krueger was always known to be a child murderer first and foremost, but these teens aren't children anymore. They're borderline young adults, slowly approaching their own parenthood, and even portray sexual acts on camera. But I digress. Freddy targets these teenagers and not the actual parents solely responsible of killing him. I suppose it's possible that Freddy chose to be bound by his own demented code of conduct to just kill the children as a direct message for their parents to understand. Let the parents live the guilt of their avenging consequences, and if by any chance they were to attempt yet another avenging vendetta against an empowered Freddy Krueger, they would have absolutely no clue how to defend against him now. And that's exactly what was happening against these Elm Street kids. Having to survive against a humanoid dream demon none of them actually knew anything about, but all shared the exact same description of Freddy. Truth be told, shouldn't at least one of them have already known about the Krueger murders before these nightmare encounters with him? In my opinion, it's observably doubtful that any one of these 4 teens have actually heard of Freddy Krueger throughout all their lives, all the way up to their deaths. Now, personally speaking, for the many years I've watched this first film repeatedly, I've always wondered, just how could none of these 4 teens never heard stories about Freddy Krueger all their lives? I'll give the film and its environment the one benefit of the doubt that during their lifetime of encountering Freddy, there were no cell phones, no social media, and no internet to speak of. The lack of shared communication from the past could have contributed to the problems that led to each one's death. It's always been unclear to the audience just how much historical knowledge each one of them knew about their hometown of Springwood or Elm Street for that matter. On screen, it simply appears that the 4 of them entered within their own nightmares not recognizing Freddy Krueger, despite the fact that his skin was just horribly burned. I feel the power of word of mouth, rumors, and tall tale urban legends should have allotted all of them any large or small bits of information about Freddy, whether useful or not. The 4 of them are beyond 10 years of age, so there couldn't have been that big of a time gap between Freddy's death and the birth of all 4 teens within Elm Street. I do believe that the 4 of them should have already been born during the timeline of Freddy's death, and if they were already born during the year of Freddy's death, how could they have never heard of Freddy Krueger through the power of word of mouth, or through peers, or through news headlines? I mean, just picture the success rate of keeping a story like this of the murders of 20 children quiet and buried is next to none for a town this small. This is a story that should have never left the town in any way, shape, or form. The look of shock on Nancy's face during the shared story from her mother should have never shocked her at this point in her life. She should have already heard about these children being killed this many years ago before this film. All I'm saying is only Freddy's actual death from their parents should have remained the urban secret to take to one's grave. But none of these parents were being targeted in general. Just these 4 teens, with the exception of the very end of this first film. And then we have the rhymes and reasoning for all of Freddy's unexplained supernatural abilities. His supernatural abilities were in no way, shape, or form ever explained at all during the first film. There are so many questions to be asked about how Freddy is able to execute all the abilities he's able to do. Most importantly, how is Freddy capable of affecting the outside real world, all from inside the dream world? There's a plethora of best educated guesses circling the globe about Freddy's abilities, and I haven't heard them all, but I've heard a good number of them to theorize one of my own. So allow me to add my own best theorized guess. Let's begin on where Freddy currently dwells in comparison to the film's real-world reality. Humor me for a moment on this one. Post his death from humanity, Freddy remains confined and alone within a self-contained, purgatory-like ecosystem that exists only within some form of sub-level dreamscape universe. However, confined here, Freddy has absolute control over everything within his sub-level ecosystem. He can manifest a copy of anything or anyone of his own imagination, but only within the confines of this ecosystem. Now, as an applied perk of his supernatural abilities, Freddy is also capable of fully warping or reshaping this ecosystem how he sees fit. There's almost no limitations as to how far or how wide this ecosystem can be expanded, only currently limited to Freddy's manifested rage. However, within the scope of this first film, Freddy Krueger can only attack his victims from within the dream world alone. He cannot slip into this film's reality without the combined aid of a tight physical grip on a person while waking up. But his supernatural abilities allow for real-world physical damage upon his victims' bodies, which the real world can witness. During any given time alone within this ecosystem, Freddy can visually see other humanly manifested dreamscapes floating close to his own ecosystem, which a living human body produces during sleep cycles. And with his supernatural ability, he's able to invade your dreamscape without you knowing it until it's too late. And Freddy can probably perform this hocus pocus act within one of two ways. One, Freddy detects and homes in on your active dreams by expanding his own ecosystem to incapacitate your own dream world and traps you inside it, where Freddy has full control over you for as long as you remain asleep. And in most cases, Freddy can also keep you from waking up. Or two, Freddy detects and homes in on your active dream by tethering some form of umbilical link from his ecosystem across to your dream world and pulls you quickly into Freddy's when it's all merged into one big ecosystem that he can control. And Freddy's ecosystem can 100% fully emulate the look, the sound, and the feel of your dream and use your dream world against you, but only if you're still asleep. If you're not already asleep, Freddy shouldn't be able to find you, correct? Well, at least not in theory he couldn't. Really thinking deeper about Freddy's possible abilities, there are nearly too many untapped potential that Freddy Krueger probably already does know how to do and just never did it while on film. For years, I've always wondered to myself if Freddy can locate someone simply through their own daydreams. Is that an actual possibility? Could Freddy actually cause someone to fall into deeper sleep simply from actual daydreams? Or how about sleepwalking attacks? Would it be possible for Freddy to fully puppet master control a sleeping host to conduct sleepwalking assaults from outside in the real world? This really could be a very cool idea concept of Freddy's most advanced abilities, where most of his killings will be virtually untraceable. These are just a few shining examples of how much more could be explored with Freddy's unhinged and untapped predatorial potential. Freddy is, however, bound by reality rules though. As mentioned before, he requires someone living to pull him temporarily from out of the dream world. I do disagree with the film's creators as the exact methods of his crossover. This is just my own opinion, but the film is what it is. For the most part, I wouldn't change much of this film at all. This movie as it is really did scare the hell out of the majority of most moviegoers. And with the dreamscape world being Freddy's playground of terror, Who could honestly ever feel safe to fall asleep again? In our everyday reality, something like this entity resembling a live person like Freddy Krueger really shouldn't resemble a solid identifiable person like Freddy Krueger. I mean, I believe the closest real-life spiritual comparison to Freddy Krueger would probably be the age-old urban legend of a mystical creature only identified as the witch riding your back, or how modern medicine would categorize an event like this as sleep paralysis. I only know about such a fearful urban legend because of the one of many stories that my elder sister once told me about, having one of many encounters she experienced throughout her life. Specifically, the one encounter that occurred within our home's master bedroom. She described this specific encounter, resulting in her entire body having been forced onto the floor from a standing position, along with temporary blindness and a lost voice. She could not scream out for help in any way, shape, or form. She described this incident resulting in a great sense of pressure and weight upon both her backside along with the back of her head, all while struggling to return to her feet. Now, during her attempts to exit the master bedroom, crawling across the floor, she's physically feeling the sense of scratches upon her upper ends of her back along with her shoulders, all while faintly hearing what she can only describe as some sort of crackling or screeches in her ears. This could also be some sort of form of ringing in the ears, but she specifically mentions voice crackling or voice screeching. And once finally reaching the doorknob, this encounter finally broke off her. Now, she also did mention that she has no memory as to how she was able to reach the door, only that she ended up there somehow, some way. She also assured me that she wasn't sure what she felt was real or not, so she had her own mother visually verify any signs of welt marks on her back, and they verified that they were there, and that this was not caused by any form of human contact. She was alone. She lastly shared with me that this was one of 3 encounters that happened within our home, and that this would also happen at different locations within our town at different ages. That this was not simply isolated within our home, but the majority of these encounters were during times when she was always alone. And yes, I know how this all sounds, but she swears that, honest to God, this is the truth. The fact that something like this didn't end up killing her makes her a survivor. Is my sister a real-life Freddy Krueger survivor? Now that's a question to ask for all the ages. Could someone within our everyday reality actually survive an encounter with Freddy Krueger? I'm under the belief that yes, we could survive an encounter with this dream-weaving master, only if we were properly trained to counter such attacks with a stronger defense. It's currently unknown if Freddy's dream world ecosystem could actually be turned against him from under control of a properly trained mind, like a spiritual monk or shaman or whoever, or whether or not Freddy's ecosystem could actually be contained and locked away somehow. However, for all those that fall under the highly suggestible or weak-minded, Freddy can and will target you for his own demented pleasure and shred you towards a gruesome, bloody death. So after listening to this, if you find yourself drifting to sleep, just keep in mind of this. Freddy knows all the secrets that you keep. You won't go quiet, you'll be screaming in your sleep. And with that being said, I am Musical Weapon. Come back again. We'll do this again.